I am making a pure yubel deck profile. I got third place, or I think it was third. It was either third or fourth. I believe it was third though. Third place with this deck at my locals recently. I 2-0'd Shining Sarcophagus Dark Magician. Then I 2-1 Hero. And then I lost against Ryzeal, which when I'll get to what the cause of that was later. But overall, I was still happy with how the deck performed. It was just I did a couple misplays with how I was supposed to do things, but overall, I like the deck, so I figured why not make an update for it. So starting off with the monsters, I play 3 copies of Gruesome Grave Squirmer. Gruesome Grave Squirmer can be special summoned from your hand while you control a fiend monster. I think it's okay. If you control a fiend monster, you can activate it in hand to special summon itself, and then you have the option of destroying a fiend monster you control. And then if this card's in your graveyard, you can banish it to then special summon a 0/0 fiend from your hand. And you can only use each effect of Gruesome Grave Squirmer once per turn. And then next, I play 3 copies of Samsara D. Lotus. Samsara D. Lotus has the effect that you contribute it for cost to then be able to summon a yubel monster from your deck. And then during the end phase, if you control yubel, then you can special summon this card from your graveyard. Or I think it's from your hand or graveyard. Okay, during the end phase, if you control yubel, you can either add it to your hand or special summon it. Which I never seen a reason why you shouldn't just summon it, so always do that. And then next, I play 3 copies of Dark Beckoning Beast. Dark Beckoning Beast has the effect that when it's summoned in this deck is add opening the spirit gates. And it also has the effect that once per turn, you get an additional normal summon for a 0 attack and offense fiend. And next, I play 3 copies of Spirit of Yubel. Spirit of Yubel has the effect that if your opponent attacks, or declares a direct... I can't remember if it's your opponent attacks or declares a direct attack. It's one of the two. Where is it? When your opponent declares an attack. Okay. When your opponent declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand. When Spirit of Yubel is summoned, you can then take a spell or trap that mentions Yubel from your deck to your hand, or set it to your field. I like that it has the or set to your field because if you get drolled, then you can at least set the card you want to your field. And then Spirit of Yubel also cannot be destroyed in battle. You don't take any damage from battles involving it. And then if Spirit of Yubel is destroyed, then you can special summon a Yubel from your hand, deck, graveyard, or banished, I believe. Trying to find that so I can remember if it can summon from banished. Okay, yeah, I can. And then the only once per turns on this are its effect to summon itself, and then the effect to search. So you can destroy it as many times as you want, and it will always activate its effect to summon a new Yubel. And then next, I play 3 copies of Yubel. Yubel has the effect cannot be destroyed by battle. You take no You take no damage from battles involving it. And then if it's targeted for an attack, your opponent takes damage equal to their attacking monster's attack points. And then during the end phase, you have to attribute 1 other monster you control, or else Yubel will self-destruct. And then if Yubel is destroyed except by its own effect, then you can special summon 1 Yubel Terror Incarnate from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Speaking of, I play 2 copies of Yubel Terror Incarnate. Terror Incarnate does the exact same thing as Yubel, but instead of having to attribute 1 monster and to keep itself in play, it instead destroys every other monster in play. And then if Terror Incarnate is destroyed by card effect, if Terror Incarnate is destroyed, you can then special summon 1 copy of Yubel the Ultimate Nightmare from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And then Yubel the Ultimate Nightmare has the effect that if it can't be destroyed in battle, you take no damage from battles involving it. And then at the end of the damage step, you can activate the Ultimate Nightmare's effect to inflict damage equal to after it's battled a monster. You deal damage equal to your opponent bleh, my mouth does not want to work. I apologize. Your opponent takes damage equal to their monster's attack, and then that monster is destroyed at the end of the damage step. That's what I was trying to say. And that's it for the monsters. Moving on to the spells, I play 1 copy of Terraforming. Terraforming just lets you add a field spell from your deck to your hand. I really wish it was at 3 for Earthbound reasons, but I understand why that'd be too broken to have it think it just adds any field spell ever. Then next I play 3 copies of Nightmare Pain. Nightmare Pain has the effect that any of your opponent's monsters that can attack must attack your yubel monsters. And then your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from battles involving yubel monsters. So an example of this is if your opponent attacks you with a blue eyes, and they attack into yubel, they will take 6,000 points of damage, 3,000 points of battle damage that you would have taken in theory, and then another 3,000 points of damage from yubel's effect. And then Nightmare Pain also has the once per turn effect of being able to destroy a dark monster that is face up on your field or in your hand, to then add 1 card that mentions yubel, except for Nightmare Pain from your deck to your hand. And then next I play 3 copies of Nightmare Throne. Nightmare Throne has the effect that when it's activated, you can take a 0 attack and defense fiend from your deck and either add to your hand or destroy it. And then if a yubel monster on the field is destroyed, then you can activate its effect to take 1 yubel monster that is banished or in your graveyard that is 1 level higher or lower than the destroyed monster, add it to your hand, and if you do, you can then special summon that monster ignoring its summoning conditions. One thing I like about this is that it can actually return Phantom of Yubel from your graveyard or banish to your extra deck, or it can also just add a Terra Incarnate from your deck to your hand, and then you can special summon Terra Incarnate. The only downside of this card is that it does not specifically mention yubel, instead only mentioning yubel monsters. So, unfortunately, this is not searchable off of cards like Nightmare Pain or Spirit of Yubel. That is the only downside to this card. Because it's a similar situation to the Eye of Timaeus and Dark Magician decks, how it's not searchable because it says Dark Magician Monster and not Dark Magician. And then next I play 3 copies of Opening the Spirit Gates. When this card's activated, it adds a copy of Dark Beckoning Beast from your deck to your hand. And then, once per turn, if you control a level 10 monster, you can add a continuous spell from your graveyard to your hand. And then, also once per turn, you can discard a card to special summon a 0 attack and 0 defense fiend from your graveyard. I'm trying to remember if it does anything else, and that's it. And then because this is a Yubel deck, I feel like playing Super Polymerization is kind of mandatory. This just has the effect where you can discard 1 card, and summon a fusion monster using monsters from either side of the field's material. Neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. If I remember correctly, there's only like 2 or 3 cards that can actually even interact with it because they would negate as it resolves and not in response to it. And then next, I play 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talents. This card can only be activated when your opponent has activated a monster effect during the main phase, where you can then activate to take control. You choose one of 3 effects, where you can choose to take control of opponent's monster, draw 2 cards, or look at your opponent's hand and shuffle a card back into the deck. And you can only activate 1 Triple Tactics Talent per turn. And then the only downside of this card is that if your opponent hasn't asked you yet, if you are wanting to take control of opponent's monster or look at your opponent's hand, this card can still be ashed, just because it does have the option of you draw 2 cards, which I actually found out about, and that's made me laugh a bit. But I also play 3 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust. Thrust can only be activated when your opponent has activated a monster effect during your turn, where it lets you set a normal spell or normal trap from your deck, and then however you cannot activate that turn. But if your opponent controls a monster, then you can add a normal spell or normal trap from your deck to your hand instead. Then you go after one thrust per turn. I honestly don't know how I feel about thrust in this deck, just because the only time I was actually able to activate it was on my opponent. My opponent didn't have any monsters in play, so I couldn't just add the terraforming to my hand. Because the only things that thrust can add or set is either talent or terraforming. Since I forgot to put any kind of normal traps in this deck. However, it did come up where I was able to use it to set a dimensional barrier against my opponent playing Ryzeal, which I thought was hilarious. Anyway, and the last cards of the deck are 3 copies of Eternal Favorite. Eternal Favorite has the effect where you can only use each effect per turn, but it doesn't say you can only use one of the 2 per turn either. So, if you have 2 of these, you can actually use both effects in one turn. The first effect lets you summon a yubel monster that is banished or in your graveyard. And then second effect lets you discard a card and send this card to the graveyard to then fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from either side of the field, as long as you are using yubel. That's the only downside of that effect, is that it has to use the level 10 yubel and not the level 11 or 12 or 9 yubel monsters. It has to be specifically yubel. And then that is it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. I play 1 copy of Salamangreat Almirage, just because there have been times where I'd more or less be unable to really do anything outside of normal Dark Beckoning Beast, grab opening, grab another Dark Beckoning Beast, and normal summon a second Dark Beckoning Beast. However, if I have a yubel monster in my hand, then I could link off one of the Dark Beckoning Beasts for Almirage. If I don't want to. But it's essentially in here just so I can get a 0 attack and defense fiend that I normal summon into the graveyard so I can start using opening Spirit Gate. And then Almirage also has the effect where you can tribute to make a monster you control unable to be destroyed by card effects for a turn, but that rarely ever comes up. Because normally if Almirage is still in the field at the end phase, it's being tributed for yubel. Then I play 1 copy of Barricade Board Blocker. Blocker just makes it so that your face-up spells cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. And then when it's summoned, you can discard a card, so that at the end of the turn, you can add a continuous spell from your graveyard, a continuous spell or a field spell from your graveyard to your hand. And then next, I also play 1 copy of SP Little Knight. SP Little Knight, honestly, is just a really good card. As if you make it using a Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster, then you can target 1 card on the field or in the graveyard and banish it. However, if you use that effect, your monsters cannot attack directly that turn. And then also has another effect where if your opponent activates a card effect and you activate SP Little Knight's effect, target 2 monsters on the field with at least 1 being a monster you control, banish both until the end phase. And you can only use each effect of SP Little Knight once per turn. And then next I play 1 copy of Verudris, the Final Bringer of the End Times. Verudris has the effect that once per turn, you can detach when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can detach material and negate that effect. And then you can detach 1 more material to then destroy that card. And then if Verudris attacks while it has material, then on the attack, I think it's either attack declaration or at the start of the damage step. Let's see. Okay, at the start of the damage step, if it attacks while it has material, you can then destroy 1 card in the field. And then if Verudris is destroyed while it has material, it can then destroy 1 card on the field. Honestly, part of me really wants to play some kind of level 10 engine in Thunder Dragon, just because Verudris with Unchained Abomination is just hilarious, or even just playing Unchained Yubel. That's something else that would be really fun to do. Just because I feel like Verudris in comparison. Why do I keep trying to say that? Verudris with Unchained Abomination is just really funny, as Verudris will trigger the Abomination every time. Anyway, next I play 2 copies of what my friends and I refer to as Birthday Candle, but it's actually Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max, where its effect is very simple, where you detach material to inflict 2,000 points of damage. That's it. And then next I play 2 copies of Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Juggernaut Libe. Libe you summon by using the Gustav Max after you've dealt 2,000 damage. And then Juggernaut Libe has the effect where it can attack attack a number of times on monsters for each material it has +1. And then you can also use a material to then increase its attack by 2,000. However, you're not allowed to attack with other monsters the turn you use this effect. And then moving on to Super Poly targets, I play one copy of Mysterion the Dragon Crown, one copy of Starting Gun Fusion Dragon, and one copy of Garura Wings of Resonant Life. One of the things I'm going to change with this deck is instead of Starving Venom, I'm going to play Muddy Mud Dragon, or Mud Dragon of the Swamp, whatever it is. Just because I realize Dark isn't really being played that often at the moment, at least at my locals. So, just having something that can fuse something like Detonator and Eclipse Twins would be really good. As Mud Dragon just requires two monsters with the same attribute but different types. It's also good against Blue Eyes. Kind of like this, being able to fuse Maiden with any annoying dragon. And then, anyway, next I play one copy of Phantom of Yubel. Phantom of Yubel has the effect where you can fusion summon it just by shuffling a Yubel monster and a 0 attack and defense fiend from your graveyard or banish back into the deck. And then if your opponent activates a monster effect, you contribute this card for cost to then change that activated monster effect to your opponent destroys one Yubel monster from their hand, field, or deck. And then the only other downside of Phantom Yubel, which I understand why it has this effect, is that it cannot be used as fusion material. Which honestly makes sense, because then you could just have infinite resources when this card was at 3. To just constantly, if you use 2 Phantom Yubels, you can just put those 2 back in the extra deck and make a 3rd Phantom Yubel. That is the reason why this card has the effect it can't be used as fusion material. However, it can still be recycled with Nightmare Paint, or Nightmare Throne. And then lastly, I play 3 copies of Yubel the Loving Defender Forever. The Loving Defender Forever cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. You take no damage from battles involving it. And then at the end of the damage step, if this card battled a monster, you can activate its effect to inflict damage equal to that monster's attack, and then banish that monster. And then also when it's fusion summoned, it has the effect where you can inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent for each material used to summon it. And I only won in time against Hero because I summoned this using 7 material with like 20 seconds left in draw phase. So I was able to deal 3,500 points of damage, and then time was called. And there's just nothing he could do about it in draw phase. He thought he was being clever by dealing 1,100 points of damage and then comboing for a couple minutes. And then one of the other things that's the reason why I lost against Ryziel was because I slided out the Ultimate Nightmare from my deck, so I couldn't just have my 1 Terra Incarnate float into something else when it was destroyed. If I would have not sided out Ultimate Nightmare, then I actually would have ended up winning against Ryziel, which is honestly insane to me. But that is it for my Yubel deck profile. If you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck while still keeping it pure, meaning no Unchained, no Fiendsmith, because I'm not even going to try doing anything Fiendsmith related until the main Fiendsmith monster becomes easily accessible. But if you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck, any ideas for decks like to see me made in the future, or decks like to see face each other, I'm currently working on a Tachyon Dragon versus Photon Dragon game. And I'm also working on a Red Dragon Archfiend versus Stardust, because I remember one person had commented that, and I'm still working on it. And I'm still trying to help one of my friends finish his Stardust Dragon deck. But like I said, if you have any ideas, comment below. I always read the comments. Thank you so much for watching if you're still here.